Hello, my name is Anani Francine 13, and the name of my channel is The Oil of Amana. So, health and wellness and spirituality are topics that are near and dear to me, and I started this channel to explore perspectives around those topics. So, welcome to my first vlog, and before I jump right in, I do have a few disclaimers. Number one, I am not tech savvy, not at all. So please don't expect anything fancy here to start. And number two, I did jot down some notes that I'll be reading from time to time just to stay on track. So with that being said, I'll jump right in to my first topic of discussion, if you will, and that topic is the planet Saturn and vegan health gurus. So, Saturn in astrology is known as the wise teacher. And it's this planetary intelligence that brings us wisdom, but often wisdom that's born from challenging experiences. Saturn really strips us down to the bare facts of who we are. It disavows us of all illusions and delusions. If you're into this sort of thing, you've probably heard of the Saturn return, which is kind of what I'm getting at. When we master the courage, really the discipline to weave lives rooted in truth, then Saturn is really a potent initiator. And in my experience, it's a potent healer. So it's not a wonder that in terms of medical astrology, Saturn rules the teeth and the bones and the connective tissue in the body. And this is the perfect transition into the meat of the discussion, if you will. And that, again, is vegan health gurus who promote veganism as optimal for the health of people and the health of the planet. And beyond that, as a necessity in the achievement of spiritual enlightenment, especially in the modern age. So I hear all sorts of claims like how, eating meat and dairy calcifies the pineal gland and shuts down the third eye. I've heard that when one consumes animal foods, one takes on all the fear and the pain that the animal felt when it was slaughtered or milked. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that for a season in life, I believed these things wholeheartedly. I was a committed vegan for 8 years. I spent 2 of those years actually as a raw vegan. And I ate nothing but whole plant foods, whole organic plant foods. I went very long stretches starting my day with the often, recommended green smoothie with kale and spinach and chard, and fruit, whatever fruit I had on hand, peaches, berries, apples, whatever. I took B12 supplements. I actually invested in the finest vegan supplements, chlorella, spirulina, wheatgrass, barley grass, you name it. And I thought I was really serving my health, with my huge green salads for lunch and for dinner. I thought I was actually serving, the health of the planet, eating this way. And the first 4 years, I felt good. I felt like I had really tapped into the source of good health and longevity. And that started to shift in year 5. I started to experience bouts of fatigue, and I started to notice that my emotional and mental stability was unstable. Of course, my vegan programming, made me chalk that up to just becoming more spiritually awakened. And the fatigue I attributed to needing more protein. So I remember around that time I started to prioritize lentils and chickpeas and black beans. I started adding vegan protein powder to my smoothies every day. Then in year 6, my menstrual cycle got weird. It started to be scant, spotty, and very slow to start. It was also accompanied by hormonal breakouts every month, and each breakout would take weeks at a time to heal. And I struggled with that for 2 more years. And I did everything except question the diet. I invested in more supplements. I invested in, you know, herbal remedies promoted as cure-alls, for everything under the sun. Nothing helped. Then in the 8th year of veganism, my teeth got weird. They were very sensitive and they started to feel really loose and just rocky, which is terrifying. And then one night, I woke up to the most excruciating pain imaginable, the worst toothache. And when I went to the dentist, she let me know that I required an emergency root canal. And I was completely devastated because growing up, I had never had any dental issues. I was known for my teeth and for my smile. So again, I was just hurt. But this ultimately was my wake-up call because when I reflect on that experience now, I know that it was Saturn really inviting me to evolve, inviting me to question, and ultimately inviting me to root myself in the facts. So finally, I was, prepared to interrogate my diet, the vegan diet, and all of its dogma and all of its gurus. If it was so healthy, then why were my teeth falling apart? And if whole plant foods were so nutrient dense, then why was I not manifesting excellent health? So I quickly made the decision to start incorporating animal foods into my diet. I started with eggs, butter, raw milk, wild caught fish, some raw cheese here and there. Okay, so I was aiming at healing my teeth, right? So I was surprised when the incorporation of these animal foods brought relief to my menstrual cycle. Started to notice that it just started. It wasn't slow, wasn't scant, wasn't spotty. It just started like a normal healthy flow. And I started to notice that the hormonal breakouts diminished. I also noticed that I had way more vitality throughout the day. My vegan programming, still left me with a lingering fear of red meat until Saturn whooped my ass again in the form of severe anemia. So at that point, I started to incorporate grass-fed beef, lamb, bison, and now my diet is based on animal foods and so much vitality has returned. My teeth don't feel like rocking chairs. my cycle just starts like clockwork again. And I don't feel like fucking crying if I lose my keys or I'm late for an appointment. I apologize for the language. I just mean that my mental health and my emotional stability has just drastically improved. So my story is not uncommon at all in ex-vegan world. Um, and I wish that I had not made the decision to deprive my body of animal foods for so long, but I'm also grateful for my experience with veganism because it really deepened my calling and my passion in the health and wellness space. And so here I want to circle back to my point about menstruation, and I want to connect that point to these vegan health gurus. So, veganism and plant based diets are absolutely promoted to every demographic, no doubt about it. But there's a specific cohort of vegan gurus that I want to highlight. And namely, I want to address a disturbing trend that I see amongst prominent Black vegan health gurus and influencers, if you will, in which the vulnerabilities around Black women's reproductive health are targeted. Specifically, issues around endometriosis, PCOS, cysts, but especially fibroids. There is heavy propaganda encouraging women to eliminate meat, dairy, all saturated fat because, these foods are allegedly toxic. Another word that I hear thrown around is that, these foods are quote unquote acidic. And as such, they are the primary contributing factor to estrogen dominance, which, as we know, can be a major factor in reproductive disorders, female reproductive disorders. And I hear all kinds of statements being made about how meat rots in the colon for months, even years, causing parasites that eat away at the uterine lining and somehow greatly degenerate female reproductive health. Okay, so these claims are not only dangerous and simply fear-mongering propaganda, but these claims also have no basis in facts as it relates to female reproductive health. And I noticed that these claims are often accompanied by a nice little sales pitch involving some kind of fibroid elimination meal plan or, how-to guide or herbal product. But I never hear them address the energetics of these herbal products that they have for sale. I am a passionate medicine woman myself, and I happen to know that anyone who is rooted in the sacred traditions of herbal healing knows that an herbalist really addresses the tissue state of a person, and in this case, the unique tissue state of a woman's reproductive organs. And the unique tissue state, I'm using the word unique very intentionally here, is different for every woman, even in terms of conditions that have the same name, fibroids, cysts. Yes, it's the same medical terminology, but the tissue state of every woman is different. Herbs are absolutely sacred, and they can absolutely support and restore the health of the reproductive tissues. And there are certain herbs that are generally safe and beneficial for most women, but there is no one size fits all herbal remedy or herbal supplement for fibroid or cyst. And to suggest that there is one, which I see occurring very often, is not only misleading, but it can be dangerous. Because again, even though herbs are healing and sacred, they are not innocuous. They are not harmless. And it's very important to have the correct information in the application of herbs. I took the time to look up product information for some of these herbs, and some of the recommendations are not for every woman's tissue state. So I'll move on. I also never hear them address the importance of keeping the blood sugar stable, which is actually very key in terms of achieving and maintaining hormonal balance. Because then the fruit smoothies and the juice cleanses fail to make sense and actually prove to be very deleterious. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that fruit can't be a part of a healthy diet. It absolutely can. But fruit in a diet that is devoid of saturated fat can be harmful because it can drive insulin resistance. Saturated fat, has been maligned by the mainstream for years and years and years. The tide is starting to change there, but it is an absolute scientific fact that the endocrine system relies on saturated fat to produce and maintain the body's hormones. And we rely on saturated fat to keep the blood sugar stable. Just speaking of that, I never hear them address the deficiencies and the deficit that's left due to the lack of saturated fat in the diet they're promoting, just overall. And, the cashews and the chia seeds and the hemp seeds and the flax seeds and the walnuts, oh God, are inadequate. They do not convert, as an example, into the long chain omega-3 fatty acids that are required for the pituitary gland to function. Even if you manage to neutralize the anti-nutrients in these foods, the phytates, lectins, etc., again, they don't convert in any significant amount into those long chain fatty acids that we need. Really, you can only reliably get omega-3 fatty acids from the same place your grandmother and her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother got them from. And that's animal foods. So I want to transition into the last statement that I'd like to address that I hear along those lines. And it's one that's promoted as an alleged benefit of the diet in these circles, and that is that it drastically reduces the length of the menstrual cycle. Now, I debated, I really debated on whether or not to call out names here, but I do feel that it is important because I see this information going unchallenged often, and I know that it does real harm, especially to women, young women in particular, who are wanting to transition away from the standard American diet because they know that it has done a disservice to their health. And just speaking to the heart of women, I know that there is a longing often for a methodology to support generational healing around reproductive health and health in general. And when this ideology does real harm, there's often a tendency to suffer in silence because the facade around this lifestyle is so intense. And so, with that being said, and with respect, I want to address some of Queen Afua's information. Now, I've heard her assert that the menstrual cycle should last ideally just a few hours, maximum 2 to 3 days of light spotting. Just okay. So, as I mentioned, spirituality is important to me, and I recognize that in previous, long ago, long gone epochs of time, a menstrual cycle that lasted a few hours, sure, that was a thing on the planet. But in this current dispensation of time, a menstrual cycle that lasts only a few hours or 2 to 3 days of only light spotting, especially if that change is sudden, it's something to be looked into, especially given the fact that the diet she's promoting is deficient in saturated fat, which again is a requirement for menses. Menstruation relies on the endocrine system. The whole endocrine loop needs to function to have a healthy one, and the hormonal secretions required to secrete one's and to shed one's uterine lining relies on saturated fat. So if a woman's menstrual cycle suddenly changes in length and consistency while implementing the dietary practices she suggests, again, it should be investigated. Even if it's not accompanied by acute pain, because it can be an indication of an issue manifesting itself. If it's not implantation bleeding from a recent pregnancy, which happens, please look into it. I stumbled upon a recipe as a part of Queen Afua's 21-day detox, which she recommends that you do over and over again, but I digress. And the recipe requires 1 heaping tablespoon of her green life formula and the juice of 4 to 6 apples. Do you know how much sugar that is? And do you know that raising insulin repeatedly within a diet deficient in saturated fat, do you know that that can actually drive insulin resistance, which research supports can lead to hormonal imbalances that lead to cysts and fibroids. Iyanla Van Zant wrote, quote unquote, Queen Afua has clearly established herself as the mother architect of healing. But the fact is that encouraging women, especially women who are interested in bearing children, to start their day every day with fruit, and maligning animal foods as toxic might mean that she is the architect of insulin resistance and fibroids. And again, I'm not trying to pick on her. She's not alone. There are, she has spawned so many acolytes and devotees who continue to promote her work and advocate these concepts, which exist behind the veneer of being quote unquote African and ancestral, which drives home my point about veganism being promoted as a necessity in one's spiritual journey. There isn't anything African or ancestral about the diet that Queen Afua advocates. No one's ancestors, African or otherwise, woke up every morning to juice fruit. And it doesn't take a whole lot of research of, African culture and African spirituality to discover that whatever region and whatever really time frame you're looking at, veganism is not a thing. You can research any culture for that matter, Europeans, the indigenous of North America, South America, Central America. Veganism is a modern construct, really divorced from all ancestral foodways. And so I'm asking in earnest, it's not to be insulting at all. I want to be clear there. It's a genuine query. Has Queen Afua and other, gurus of her ilk, have they ever faced Saturn? Have they ever gotten down to the bare bones and to the facts? Because when I consider the people that this ideology does harm to, it just feels like a massive costume party. And so, with that being said, I'm going to end, and I want to encourage everyone to do some digging as it relates to health. And in the description box, I'm going to link some videos of people who have done really amazing research around health in general, but around the female reproductive system in particular. So thank you for watching my first vlog. Again, my name is Anani, Francine 13. I hope that your vision is clear, and I hope that your health is blessed.